Watch the video until the end to learn our analysis of the Russia and Ukraine war in detail. As Ukrainian soldiers continue to make territorial gains in the counteroffensive, Russian state TV propagandists are slowly beginning to recognize that there are problems with the Russian military assault in Ukraine, according to Justin Bronk. Russian state TV propagandists are finding it more difficult to ignore the fact that events in Ukraine are not going according to plan. He noted that Russian experts have no way to spin this in a positive light for their country. Professor Brock further suggested that it is hazardous for Vladimir Putin to have so strongly connected himself with the invasion, noting that such a strong linkage might lead to a potential deterioration of Putin's image among the Russian population and inside the Kremlin. Professor Brock said it's interesting that a lot of seasoned and hardline propagandists are approaching panic in how they explain things on state television. There is no way to portray this as anything other than a significant issue for Russia. There are no clear solutions other than we will win. We need to be harder. We must escalate, but the obvious question is how? He said. It's funny to hear these experts say, well, it's impossible to win under the present conditions without complete mobilization, and it's too late to do it now. We should have done it earlier. Second, it is essential to note that Russian propaganda television often has a voice that is ostensibly pro-NATO, or rather gloomy, to be ridiculed and criticized by others. It is not unheard of for someone to say something that seems somewhat reasonable. What is unique is the notion that these individuals have been permitted to win the debate nearly in the last few days. He emphasized there isn't much that the hardliners can do to make this sound good, referring to Putin and his image among the Russian public. He added, it is dangerous for Putin to have associated himself very strongly on a personal level with what the Russian state refers to as this special military operation, and to have stated that he was exercising very close control over tactical events. It is perilous for President Putin that a second military defeat of this magnitude has occurred in the war's first 7 months. He stated about the current Ukrainian counteroffensive campaign. It looks that the Russians are on the run, and Ukraine telegraphed its large-scale counteroffensive incursion in the south for almost 2 months before its recent start. Russia had enough time to redeploy its deployable reserves and many of its elite units from elsewhere along the front line and seized portions of Ukraine, particularly from the Donbass to Kherson, he stated. This meant that Ukrainian troops' incursion and the counteroffensive that is still happening and steadily gaining ground made a massive number of Russian resistance, and that they are essentially battling the majority of the Russian army's remaining regular strength in Ukraine. This resulted in the remainder of the lines being held thinly and the Russians having relatively few reserve soldiers left in other theaters. When the Ukrainians pushed a breakthrough in the Kharkov Oblast region on Wednesday evening and immediately pushed reinforcements through to allow that initial breakout force, there were just a few Russian reserve units in the area to attempt to stop them. Since the commencement of the Ukrainian counteroffensive on September 6, Ukrainian troops have reclaimed more than 300 communities in the Kharkiv area, according to Hanna Melior, the Deputy Minister of Defense of Ukraine. Other updates from Ukraine's Military of Defense revealed that Russian intelligence officers and military commanders have begun to evaluate the Russian-occupied regions of Crimea and southern Ukraine and urgently resettled their families back into Russian territory in response to the ongoing Ukrainian attack. In light of the Ukrainian successes, Moscow has recognized that Russian soldiers have withdrawn from some eastern regions, but has refused to attribute the withdrawal to the Ukrainian counteroffensive operation. The Kremlin has framed the most recent military deployments to reorganize its forces. On Monday, it asserted that Russia will continue fighting until all initial objectives are achieved. Ukraine President Volodymyr Zelensky has pledged to retake the peninsula that Russia seized in 2014. Recently, the head of the Ukrainian military claimed responsibility for missile attacks on Russian air sites in Crimea. Ukraine asserts that Russian officials are frantically attempting to sell their homes and evacuate Crimea as Ukrainian forces approach. According to Ukraine Now, which promotes itself as the country's most reliable source of official information, Russian officials in Crimea are attempting to sell their residences secretly, Ukraine Now posted on the Telegram messaging service, despite the population's assurances that they are safe on the peninsula. Representatives of the Occupation Administration of Crimea, FSB officers, and commanders of some military units are secretly attempting to sell their homes and evacuate their relatives from the peninsula, according to the GUR. Tuesday, September 13, Ukraine's Defense Intelligence Service stated that occupying authorities in Crimea were desperately seeking to relocate their families to Russia. According to a statement on the GUR website, Russian invaders have prohibited housing sales and restricted access to war-related information. Vladimir Zelensky has said that Ukraine has recaptured 8,000 square kilometers of land controlled by Russia since February 24. After being forced back from the Ukrainian capital Kyiv shortly after its invasion, the Kremlin refocused its attention on conquering land next to Crimea, Donetsk and Luhansk in the industrial Donbas region of eastern Ukraine, which insurgents had seized in 2014. Earlier this month, Kyiv advised inhabitants of Crimea to construct bomb shelters and stock up on supplies as the Ukrainian government pushed forward with preparations for military counteroffensive to oust Russian forces from Ukrainian territory. The Black Sea Peninsula was believed to be beyond the range of Ukrainian weaponry, but explosions at Russian military installations in Crimea have cast doubt on this assumption. As its stockpiles were reduced, experts from the military intelligence community indicate in their most recent analysis that Moscow is increasingly procuring armaments from other strongly sanctioned regimes. As a result of sanctions and military defeats, the troops of Russian President Vladimir Putin are compelled to purchase weaponry from North Korea and Iran. The Ministry of Defense of the United Kingdom provided an update citing accusations that Ukrainian troops had shot down an Iranian-made drone as proof that Moscow uses technology from Tehran as part of an attack that has blasted through Russian lines near Kharkov on the Eastern Front. Ukraine claimed to have shot down a drone near Kyiv Pianist. The photograph revealed that the Shahid suicide drone had been shot down by Ukrainian troops and had not exploded on contact as intended, even though Kyiv officials offered minimal information. Russia has likely deployed Iranian uncrewed aerial vehicles UAVs for the first time in Ukraine, according to the British Ministry of Defense MOD. On September 13, 2022, Ukrainian authorities said that their troops had shot down a Shahid 136 UAV near Kupiansky in the region of Ukraine's continuing successful operation. Similar Iranian-made devices were likely employed in assaults on the Middle East, notably the July 2021 attack on the oil ship Montana Mercer St. As its stockpiles diminish, Russia is almost probably obtaining more weapons from strongly sanctioned regimes like Iran and North Korea, according to a Ministry of Defense update. The loss of a Shahid 136 near the front line shows that Russia may seek to deploy the system for tactical attacks rather than against strategic targets farther within Ukrainian territory. In the aftermath of Ukraine's advancement, pressure has been mounting on Putin, with the Russian autocrat facing domestic opposition. A group of St. Petersburg municipal legislators who demanded Putin's dismissal over the conflict would likely lose their district council after a judge's verdict on Tuesday, one of the deputies said. According to Nikita Euphoriev, the court ruled that a series of previous council sessions were unlawful, clearing the path for the council to be dissolved by the regional governor. Dmitry Paga, an additional council member, said that the same court penalized 47,000 rubles for discrediting the government by advocating for Putin's dismissal for further Smolensky. Local council members were scheduled to appear in court. A group of council deputies petitioned the State Duma last week to file accusations of state treason against Putin and remove him from office, citing various reasons, including Russia's military defeats in Ukraine and the harm to its economy caused by Western sanctions. Another local delegate said on Monday that 65 municipal members from St. Petersburg, Moscow, and numerous other districts had signed a petition demanding Putin's resignation. Despite not presenting an imminent danger to Putin's hold on power, the initiatives constitute unusual demonstrations of opposition by elected politicians when Russians face severe jail terms for disparaging the armed forces or distributing intentionally incorrect information about them. What do you think about this? Don't forget to leave your comments and subscribe to our channel.